Joined here by Brandon Jones from San Marcos in California, and you're running for governor.
Yes, sir.
What makes you want to run for governor here in California?
Yeah, it boils down to the fact that I'm an everyday Californian. So I feel the pain, as the average person does, of living in this state. I feel the pain of the high costs. I feel the pain of what it's like to start a business in California. I've started two. I feel the struggle of sending my kids to public schools and kind of knowing what they're experiencing there. So the primary driver for me was, one, feeling the pain that everybody else feels, but also just having a love for the state and a love for the people of California. So that's been the main driver.
And I think, too, in your case, you talk about coming from the Midwest to California, and you came around the time of 9/11 back in 2001.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how did you land here in California? Let's start with that.
Yeah, so graduated high school in '98 and kind of bounced around a little bit, did a few years in the military as well. But when I was 20 years old, I caught the acting bug. So I went from Iowa to West Hollywood. That was quite the culture shock. But came out here originally for acting school, and so that's what brought me out here.
So you spent some time in the military too. What kind of what did that teach you as far as being here in California? I imagine were you in California for your time in the service, or?
I was actually in San Diego for 6 months after boot camp, and then I was stationed in Jacksonville for the rest of my time. But it certainly taught me discipline for sure, but also instilled in me even early on then just a desire to want to serve people. And so that's carried through my life up to this point as well.
Being in San Diego for that service helped you at all? I mean, as far as getting not only connection with the country, but I'm sure with the community in California. And I know that you reside not too far from San Diego now.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it definitely instilled in me a love for the state, not just because of the beauty and the climate and all that, but just the people of California. I mean, I've been a lot of places in my life, and obviously growing up in Iowa, but people in California are so diverse, they're so innovative, and it just really instilled in me a love for the people and the place, even at that season, you bet.
And so now you're a businessman now, right?
Yes,
and what did that transition from the acting bug to business teach you? And then has business been more difficult in the last several years? Has that somewhat motivated you to run as well, or the way that Californians do business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my first company in Los Angeles at the age of 24. So it was actually an entertainment company. So I came out of acting school and then started my career as an entrepreneur at 24. It was an entertainment company. We would send entertainers to like kids' parties and church events and that kind of thing. It became a statewide company, actually branched into about 6 different states over the years, and it got acquired eventually. But yeah, I mean, even with that company, in my first company, having started it in California, yeah, I mean, I experienced the excessive regulations and all the permits that are required to do things, paying the franchise tax board nearly $1,000 a year, that you don't see that kind of thing in other states. And so, yeah, it definitely gave me a love for small business owners, but also as someone who had a small business, I was feeling the impact of these excessive regulations that small businesses face for sure.
I was going to say, you must really love the state to go through all the regulations and then to stay here.
Yeah. Well, and in 2010, after being married a year, I met my wife in LA. In 2007, we got married in 2009. But a year after that, being a young entrepreneur and then feeling the burden of having to provide not just for myself, but for a family, we did decide to join the California Exodus, and we left for 10 years. Yeah, so I get why people leave. It's becoming more and more unbearable for Californians to remain here, but at this season of life, we're here to stay, and we're here to fight for the people of this state. Yeah, you bet.
What's that thing that's motivating you the most in this run?
Yeah, again, so it's a love for the place and a love for the people, but as I mentioned a few minutes ago, it's also, I'm somebody as an everyday Californian who feels the pain of living here myself. And so that combined with my 20 years experience as an entrepreneur, I haven't just done kids parties. I've worked in affordable housing. I owned a national ad agency. I've been in tech. And so really combining my professional experience with my desire to want to help fix California, that's what's driving me to do this.
Do you think a lot of that goes through the regulation? Is that a priority for you once you get in? That's like number one for me. I'm going to be fixing regulation as that person who has that experience of being the businessman.
Yeah, I mean, the number one issue for me is cost. It's the economy. Right. I believe that if you can lower the cost of living in California, you will, by extension, help the other issues that plague our state, like crime, like homelessness, like public education. So the primary focus is cost in the economy and making California more affordable for the everyday person, you bet.
Was it quite a sticker shock going from Iowa to California when you initially moved? And then what does that look like even compared to now what you're experiencing as far as cost for everyday Californians?
Oh yeah, I mean it just keeps getting higher and higher. I mean, coming from Iowa to, I mean, you can't even compare. I mean, if you look at housing as just one example, the median price to purchase a single family home in California is over $800,000. Well, you compare that to the Midwest where it's $200,000. I mean, it's not even, you're not even looking at apples to apples anymore. It's just absolutely insane, and it's becoming unsustainable for people.
And then how important is it to have that message come here to Bakersfield? Because there's several people that have moved to Bakersfield over the last several years because of the cost of living, and yet the cost here is still growing and becoming more expensive, and yet it's still considered one of the most affordable places in California.
Yeah, and as I've talked with folks here in Bakersfield, I do understand that it's more affordable, especially like with areas like San Diego. That's where my family and I live, and even other places like LA. But I think there's a lot that can be done even here in Bakersfield to lower the cost of living, not just housing, but gas and taxes. Part of my plan is to completely obliterate state income tax in California, but also reducing things like corporate tax for businesses as well. So there's a lot that can be done even in places like Bakersfield where comparatively the cost of living is lower. I think we can still get it lower.
What do you make of an argument? I'm sure that you would have Democrat opponents that say, well, the taxes are there for a reason because it helps pay for the public good. What say you?
Well, I think we need taxes, right? But you look at other states like Texas and Florida, they have no state income tax, and they're economically doing far better than California. And you look at just as one example with Florida, they've had no state income tax, and now Governor DeSantis wants to remove property tax. Well, how are they able to do that? Well, because they have thriving economies that attract more people, more business. They have more taxable activity, and once you have that, then you can remove or reduce things like state income tax while still covering essential services and keeping the economy thriving. The problem in California is it's driving everybody out. And so what you've seen over and over again is more government, more taxes, but the issues that we are facing just keep getting worse. More crime, more homelessness, higher costs, and it's clearly not working.
Yeah, and as far as energy policy too, of course, you're coming to the gas capital of California. This, as we hear news of another refinery planning to close down as well in the state. Where are you on energy as far as oil energy? Are you someone who's looking forward to the future as far as green energy? Or do you look at a place like Kern County and say, this is something that we already have, why not develop more?
Exactly, yeah. And when it comes to oil and really any industry, we want to do what we can to attract those industries here. But again, you look at oil, gas. It's the same regardless of industry. It doesn't make sense for these companies to do business here, so they go to other places where it's more favorable for them as a business. And again, that's part of the reason why gas prices are so high in California is because of the excessive regulations that make it difficult for businesses to stay.
And then I know with water storage is a big topic, and then it became even larger this past year, not because of the droughts that we've experienced, but because of the fires and the lack of capabilities that we saw in Los Angeles. Where are you as far as building more water storage? Are you in favor of greater infrastructure for that?
I am 100%. California has been in a water conservation mode really since the 1980s. And so part of that comes down to just a philosophy of politics, but also a philosophy of how we view water. I mean, it seems ridiculous that we would have a water shortage. Our neighbor is the Pacific Ocean, right? But you look at things like desalination plants and a lot of things that we could do to get us in a surplus when it comes to the water situation, but largely due to excessive environmental regulations that prevent those kinds of initiatives from happening, we remain in a water shortage, a water crisis scenario. I mean, even situations where you have 1 million gallons of fresh water being dumped into the Pacific Ocean to preserve a small delta smelt fish. You have these policies that just clearly are not in the best interests of the people of California, and so we have situations like a water crisis. But it need not be that way.
I know you mentioned people of California a lot, and you mentioned that that's your motivation for running are the people. Can you tell us about some of the people that you've met in California, and I imagine how that sort of drives you to run for office like this?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's been great. We've been doing town halls throughout California, currently largely in San Diego, but we're moving throughout the state. we've been meeting people from all different kinds of backgrounds. And what we're realizing is I'm running as a Republican, but we're not just interacting with Republicans. Like, I've really made attempts to get in front of folks that are, Democrat or independent or undecided. And what we're learning is these issues like crime, homelessness, you mentioned water, the economy in general, these are not partisan issues. Like, everyone wants to see a better plan forward. And so I think in California, there's a real political shift taking place where people are open. And I think that you mentioned the LA wildfires. That's really jolted people a lot to say, hey, okay, this is where I've stood politically for so many years, but I'm open to a new vision, a new perspective. And so that's what I'm noticing.
And I know that we like to do the compare and contrast also with the Newsom administration, which obviously a different party anyway. Yeah. What are your thoughts on his performance as governor in these last nearly 8 years?
Oh, it's abysmal. I mean, obviously he's been governor 8 years. He was lieutenant governor for 8 years, and he served as mayor of San Francisco. Even when he was mayor of San Francisco, we talked about ending homelessness. Homelessness has increased 40% in the last 5 years. So his approval rating's below 30%. So yeah, I mean, he's done a terrible job. And the people of California are seeing that more and more. And we need desperate change, and Newsom certainly isn't the solution. Thankfully, he'll be out of office, but the question is, do we want somebody to come in who is of the same pedigree as him? Certainly not.
I was going to say, are you concerned about some of these people that are coming up from Sacramento that have ties to the Newsom administration, some roles in his executive office for the state, having a decent chance of becoming governor in the state?
I just don't think so. I think on the Democrat side of things, they're really struggling to find their narrative. They really are, because they're seeing this shift take place in California. So I think their chances of winning this election are becoming less and less, because the people of this state are just waking up to the oppressive regulations that they have pushed for so long.
I know from an early poll that we saw, from an early Emerson poll, we saw Kamala Harris with 31%, but the same poll also shows a high disapproval rating as well. So once it starts getting down to fewer candidates, should she decide to go in, there's a question of who really is that number one candidate on that side of the aisle. What is your thought when you see all those different candidates? I know you mentioned that people are looking for who that person is. Do you think there's a window there for yourself to jump through?
I think so. I think, and again, this is based on my interactions with the people of this state, but what people are looking for is a new perspective, a new vision, a new plan, and that is what I'm bringing. Also, people are wanting somebody who is of them. They want an everyday person who understands their pain, their struggles, their frustrations, and I don't think they're seeing that in Kamala Harris. I don't think they're seeing that in Gavin Newsom, which is why there's this growing sentiment that people feel disconnected from their political leaders. I am of the people, and I am for the people, and I think that gives me a great shot in this race.
I was going to say, you've talked about the people so much. Can you describe everyday California? It sounds like an everyday Californian.
Yeah. Look, people wake up and they see their neighborhoods less safe. They find it more difficult just to buy eggs and put gas in their tank and pay for their rent. They wake up and they struggle with sending their kids to school where they're exposed to pornography and things like critical race theory. These are the kitchen table issues that people are experiencing. These are the kitchen table issues that I'm experiencing, and these are the issues that I'm fighting for. Those are the things that matter to the everyday person in California.
And it's an open primary, so technically anybody, you could have 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. Yeah. More likely than not, you would have a 2 Democrat scenario, but there are Republicans in this race. I know you want to make that push as well. Yeah. How do you get above maybe some of those higher profile names where people who maybe have more recognized Chad Bianco in Southern California, or now Steve Hilton from his time on Fox News? How do you, I guess, position yourself to be ahead of them once it's time for the polls to be taken?
Well, first I have a plan. I've actually authored a book called California's Comeback, so I have a detailed plan that addresses the issues that matter most to Californians, and we've touched on a few of them like homelessness, crime, the economy, but I actually have a real plan. If you listen to these guys speak, and I've been at meetings with them and heard them speak, firsthand, they don't have a plan. They talk about how bad the Democratic Party is, they talk about how great they are, but they don't actually have a well thought out, articulated vision to move California forward. I do. So that's one thing. The second thing is that I come from 20 years as an entrepreneur where I've actually done things that have qualified me for this job. As one example, I spent 6 years in affordable housing. I've worked on the front lines of the homelessness crisis. My company rehabilitated nearly 100 single and multifamily dwellings for the homeless. I know exactly what works and what doesn't. I know how to fix that problem. but other things too, like starting companies, creating jobs, balancing budgets. I've done things professionally that have prepared me and qualified me for this office. These other candidates have not had that experience.
Can you talk about your just the idea of writing a book? Because it sounds like you have that passion for this issue and for solving issues in California.
Sure.
What motivated you to write that book? Is it the same thing for why you're running?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, this is my first go at running for public office. This wasn't in my life's plan. But when I started to, seriously consider running, and it became official late last year, I thought, day one, if I'm going to run for office, then it just makes sense that I would have an actual plan for what I would do as governor. And so, as I began to, of course, do all the research and put together the different policy positions, I wanted a way to make it easily digestible by the average person. So I'm like, well, put it in a book. So it's available on Amazon, and California's Comeback, you bet.
I was going to say, where can people purchase it so they can go to Amazon? We can throw that link in the article there too.
Yeah, absolutely, you bet.
So we spoke about homelessness there too. Bakersfield has a homelessness issue and affordable housing. I guess in comparison to the rest of the state, maybe not quite to the extent that you see in other places, but still for people here who are expecting lower cost of living, it's not always there. What are your plans for homelessness, and how does that differ from other people in this race?
Yeah, great question, Will. I'm glad you asked. So, typically when people are hit with that question, other candidates that are running, so how do you fix homelessness? And you're usually going to hear two things. Well, we have to address the mental health crisis. We also have to deal with drug addiction. But those are not the fundamental issues that drive homelessness. Those are symptomatic issues. The root cause of homelessness is a breakdown of the nuclear family. So, look, whatever the solution or the fix is for California, these policy positions must make their way down to the family level. It must be about encouraging and strengthening families. And quick story, I mentioned being in affordable housing. I've worked with many homeless people, and what I learned is this: you can give them free rent, free food, you can give them all the freebies you want, and get them behind closed doors. In 95% of the cases, they will go right back out to the streets within 6 months. The key is you have to get people into a loving, supportive family environment. So there's a lot that could be said about my plan for homelessness, but it deals with restoring the family structure. That is the root cause of homelessness. One other quick stat, 85% of incarcerated males in California come from single parent households, while crime and homelessness are inextricably linked, right? So the point is that these issues that we face largely come down to the breakdown of the family. We have to restore the family unit.
And then how do you do that from the governor's office? What are some policies that you would enact to help that to take place?
Yeah, so really, again, my primary issue that I'm focused on is the economy, making California more affordable for the average person. So you think, well, how does that impact families? Well, what's the biggest thing that couples fight over? Money. Finances, right? And so when it's impossible for people to afford to live, it puts pressure on families. It puts pressure on marriages. People are working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. They're neglecting their marriage. They're neglecting their kids. So again, all these things come back to the family. So as I touched on earlier, things like getting rid of the state income tax, rolling back excessive regulations that oppress small business and individuals, doing what we can to lower things like the cost of gas and those kinds of things. All those things make it down to the family.
And then I know you came into town. You appeared on a podcast earlier as well that you were coming in for. How do you reach out to the voters? Because not only are you going to probably have to reach out to a number of Republican voters, get them on your ticket too, but you're going to also have to reach across the aisle to Democrats, and then also to people that maybe don't absorb traditional media in the state as well, or maybe aren't the traditional voter as well. Yeah. How do you make that cross platform and cross party messaging available for people to want to vote for you?
Yeah, exactly. So I was on Every Citizen Armed podcast yesterday, and we're doing more of these podcasts. My campaign is actually reaching out to podcasters who lean left. Like, I don't want to just have conversations with people that necessarily agree with me. I want to talk to all people. But it boils down to asking the question, okay, what issues matter to different people at different seasons of life? And having those conversations that resonate with them. Healthcare, for instance, doesn't mean the same thing for somebody who's 19 years old as it does for somebody who's 70. So you have to have conversations with people with where they're at in their different seasons of life. But also going to the places where these people are having these conversations. I mean, obviously different media outlets, but also podcasts, And doing town halls has been a great way for us to engage with the community and having FaceTime with people that have different views politically. So those would be a few ways.
So I know a lot of times too, when it comes down to these races, even though it's a race for the governor in California, your opposition, I'm sure, and mostly would be from the Democratic side of the aisle, would always tie back to the Republicans and being close to Trump, and they would associate you with the policies of the White House. How do you think he's doing so far? Are there things that you like that you think are good for Californians that he's doing? Are there things that maybe you think could be improved upon from the White House that could be better for Californians?
Yeah, I support Donald Trump, President Trump. Obviously, I voted for him, and I agree with a lot of what he's doing. Specific to California, obviously, two things that come. Well, one of the main things that's come up recently is, of course, immigration, and his views on that. So I can touch on that a little bit. I believe that the state of California should cooperate with federal agencies, ICE, and getting people who are here illegally deported. But that's just one area. But yes, I would align and cooperate with the federal government should I become governor.
What do you think about the tariffs? Are the tariffs a good thing? I mean, would you support a thing or a policy like what Governor Newsom is wanting to do, which is to sort of have separate tariffs or no tariffs at all that are different from what the rest of the country is having to experience?
Yeah, so I think it boils down to whether it's tariffs or anything else, you have to start with a simple question. What is best for the residents of California? What is best for the residents of California? Now, what you see Trump doing is, we're no longer allowing ourselves to be ripped off by these foreign nations. And so these tariffs that he's put in place, anytime you make a systemic fundamental change like that, it's going to shock the market. People get scared with change in the short term. But I believe with tariffs specifically, it's short-term pain for a long-term gain. And we're already seeing the markets rebound. But yeah, I believe the tariffs are best for us as a nation, and it's also best for us by extension as the people of California. But you're going to go through some turbulent waters in the short term.
Is that always a tough message when it's in the short term, and then the short term is when you're running for governor too?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's about a longer term vision, and that's part of what we're experiencing in the state is we're getting all these short term Band-Aid solutions to issues like homelessness, and what we really need is a long-term, real, comprehensive vision.
I know the cost is the biggest issue for you too, but a main criticism of Governor Newsom has been the budget, and the state legislature has been the budget. Is the budget a big issue for you as well, as far as putting California in debt and getting them, trying to alleviate the debt that California is already in?
Yeah, I mean, we have a state government that by and large is completely unaccountable. When you have a governor who doesn't know where over $20 billion went, I mean, that's just obviously that's a problem. So one thing that I would do day one is by executive order, I would audit the state government. We should have full transparency into where our money is going. I also believe that we should use blockchain technology for maximum transparency in terms of how money's being spent. And we should identify the waste, fraud, and abuse. And my position is this: whatever money has been stolen from the people of California by the state government, it should be given back. It was stolen from them, it should be given back. So that's my thought there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one that's, I think, pretty popular when you think about how many people have felt that they see how much money the state spends. Their argument is always it's for these essential programs that wouldn't exist without the taxpayer dollars. Yeah. And that could be for affordable housing, could be for homelessness. Yeah. And then there's, of course, the question, which I imagine you're asking, which is that money going to work?
Yeah, is it going to work? And if you look at, there's numerous examples where it's clear that the money is not going to where it was said it was going to go to. Like, as one example, LAUSD, $9 billion annual budget. $1 billion of that doesn't even make its way to the students. It goes to consultants and administrative costs. That's who knows where it goes, right? And so this is why we need to audit. We need to do independent audits and have full transparency. The answer here is not more government, more taxes. We've lived under that kind of oppressive philosophy for 2 decades, and it clearly doesn't work.
And I know another issue is crime. I imagine you were supportive of Prop 36, which passed, and it passed overwhelmingly. I think there were the concerns from especially the Newsom administration. They said, we have our series of crime bills, we're going to be fine on its own. Yeah. Then eventually you see the results in the state, 70-30 for an issue that really seemed to have started from as a Republican issue and then became more popular amongst Democratic mayors. Maybe it was a little bit lost in translation in the state legislature, where A number of Democrats were against it.
Yeah.
Where do you see issues of crime being as a campaign, as running on it as a campaign? Do you think that's a really important place to continue, I guess, a momentum of Californians that want to see change and reform to the way the laws are currently written?
100%. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It's obviously a top issue, and I totally support and voted for Proposition 36. But as you mentioned, Newsom and many of the Democrats in Sacramento were against it, and that only proves my point that there is this disconnect from the political leaders and what the people of the state actually want. You're right, 70% voted for Prop 36. Here's what's so revealing about Prop 36 is that the power to bring about real change is not with any single political leader, governor or otherwise, it's with the people. Proposition 36 was a grassroots movement that became law, not because Newsom or many Democrats in Sacramento wanted it, they didn't, but the people wanted it. And so many of them wanted it that it became law anyway. So, and that's really kind of going back to why I'm running. A big piece of that is to unite the people of California to bring about collective change to restore California. So I'm also leading a movement called Restore California, which is designed to do exactly what Prop 36 did, unite the people of this state together to collectively take action to restore California.
I know public safety is an issue where it helps with livability too, and I'm sure attracts people much the way I imagine a no state income tax would do the same.
Yeah. Well, of course, when you have higher crime, communities get neglected. I mean, all these issues are interconnected. But yeah, crime is definitely a big issue, but it comes down to, again, the family unit. When there's a breakdown of the family, crime goes up and it just bleeds into these other issues as well.
And now going back to immigration too, Bakersfield's an interesting area. It's surrounded by a lot of farmland. We have a lot of farm workers. Yeah. There's a number of people here that work undocumented or on visas that are not originally from the United States. Yeah. How do you make that position on immigration where you align with the Trump administration known to try and get people to vote for you out here that maybe say there's a lot of things that we agree with you on, especially the everyday Californian thing, but I may have family, I may not totally agree with you on immigration. Why should they vote for you?
Well, look, when it comes to immigration, I mean, you can't have it both ways, right? You can't say, well, I believe in a secure border, but if people are here illegally, then we'll tolerate it. You can't have it both ways. Either you secure the border and you have people that are here legally, or you don't. Now, I realize that it's tough, especially in the agricultural industry where you have people that are here and they could be here legally with visas, but then you have a large number of undocumented workers that are here working illegally. They need to be deported, but and this gets into a broader conversation. We need to reform our immigration laws so it is easier for people to go through the legal channels to come here legally. But people need to be here legally. Would
you be supportive of if you find a situation where you have a farm worker that has not committed any crimes, is undocumented, that's come to this country, would you support deporting them, or would you support, as you mentioned, a fix to the immigration system that says, hey, you haven't done anything wrong here in the country, we'll work on a program that will keep you here, and then of course keep business productive as well, because I know that there would be shocks that would come if you have a large part of the workforce deported or taken away.
Yeah, I mean, for those kind of folks, I would love to be part of a conversation and policies that would really expedite getting them through, the process to be here legally. But they just can't be here illegally. If we can expedite that process to get them here legally, 100%, I'd love to be a part of that solution.
What's the biggest shock that you've seen so far coming from San Diego to other parts of the state, whether it's Bakersfield or somewhere else?
The biggest shock has been that regardless of where we go, even though, there may be a difference in kind of culture, obviously California's a big place, 5th largest economy in the world. I expected to get kind of a lot of differing perspectives on these issues that I'm fighting for, but what I'm finding is that the people of California are more united in their views of these issues than I thought. They really are. So that's been probably the biggest shocker for me.
Something when you talk about the people of California and wanting to run for the people and those everyday Californians, I think of you as an Iowan. I'm sure you hear the whole Iowa nice reputation and how great the people there are. But it's also you don't always hear that about the people of California as far as from a tourist perspective. They go to Los Angeles and they have this idea of the state. What's been your idea of the state and meeting all these people that I'm sure you've spent time with in San Diego and then of course have been meeting along the way in this process?
Yeah, I mean, for anyone who's actually lived in California, I mean, I've lived in California a total of 15 years. Californians are great people. I think a lot of the negative reputation that people have about California comes from people who've never been here, and just things that kind of come out of the entertainment industry and those kind of things that influences how people think about the state at large. But people of California, as I mentioned earlier, are innovative. They're so diverse, and they're just loving people. I mean, that's what keeps my family and I here. So, yeah, that's our view.
What does this perfect year look like for you as you go into this primary next year? What do you hope to gain in 2025, and what momentum do you hope that takes you to in 2026?
Yeah, really, it's just pedal to the metal. Like it's just all gas, no brakes for us. We want to just meet as many people as possible. The campaign is gaining momentum, and look, the momentum isn't really even coming from advertising. I mean, we are running ads, but it's coming just from organic movement. We have people all over the state now that are just reaching out and saying, hey, we would love to be part of the Restore California movement. How can we start a town hall event in our community? And so I would just love to see that momentum continue. I believe that it will. And yeah, see where that takes us into the June primary of 26.
Thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate your time. I mean, this has been great that you've been able to make your way up and take a little bit of time here in Bakersfield.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.